Hi there, it's Ton Wilson again with Ton's Two Cents in an episode of Keep the Change with Mike Parkinson from 24 Hour Company. We are going to be continuing our graphics discussion here. There is a lot of things that we talk about that Mike and I are in agreement on, and you hear this from me all the time, is the strategic reason why we do what we do. Why do we propose? Why do we do graphics? Understanding the why is as important as being able to demonstrate and articulate the how. And there's a strategic reason behind why we do what we do. And so we were just finishing an episode on graphics. And so, Mike, let's kind of continue that conversation because I truly believe concept graphics are um, they're the purple unicorn here in this industry. And those who understand and master that are those who really are successful. And I think that proposal graphics sometimes are the last thing that we think about, but it should be the first thing that we think about. So let's kind of talk a few more minutes about your thoughts on that, maybe your approach to it, and how you kind of view that, and what should our intellectuals know of how we can do this and leverage that to be successful.
Absolutely. The thing I get asked to do most now, and the thing I get paid the most to do is what we've called visual solutioning. And what it is it's a way to represent the solution so that it's glanceable. I can look at it at a glance and go, I get where you're going. I understand what your solution is and how I can evaluate this. That's hard. That's very challenging. And to make it clear, graphics shouldn't come first, never. Uh, and key graphics should come early. So the first thing that I do when I'm visual solutioning is I'm going to meet with the team and I'm going to figure out what our elevator pitch is. You can call it whatever you want: message, headline, takeaway, bumper sticker, whatever you want to call it. But it's our summation of the story we're about ready to tell. Once upon a time, there was a client and this customer was able to achieve these goals using our solution. And then the rest of the proposal is proving those points. So what I do is we get down, and that's the hardest part, coming up with that overall message. That's going to be the first sentence in your proposal. It's your executive summary, whatever you want to call it. Once we figure that out and I have a structure for doing it, then what I'm going to do is we're going to answer very specific questions. And I talked about the motivator and the means. One of the techniques I use to uncover the motivators is an HFB mind map: hopes, fears, and biases. And what we do is when we need to, now be careful, because if we do an HFB mind map and we already know what the customer cares about, we'll second guess ourselves. Don't do that. But if the audience is not in agreement, clashing, then we do an HFB mind map. And so what we say is, okay, what's a hope? Well, the American Red Cross cares about, for disaster recovery, they care about making sure they don't lose lives. And I say, okay, let's break that down. Well, we have enough equipment, we have enough people, we have enough money, yada, yada. Okay, what do they hope for? And if my client says, well, they hope that they don't lose lives, that tells me that this particular client doesn't know the customer very well, because they just come up with the antithesis. A hope and a fear, they're exact opposite. That tells me you probably shouldn't be bidding on it. But let's walk into the real world where people still bid on things that they aren't necessarily the right position, best position to do it, but that's life. So we come up with these hopes, fears, and biases. And then what we look for are things that appear over and over again. And that becomes one of our key motivators. And then the means, I use what's called an ATB matrix: my as is, to be, and barriers. So we say, right now it takes 2 days to repair a vehicle. I want it to be repaired in 2 hours. What are the barriers preventing that? List those barriers, remove those barriers, solve those barriers. So what it does is it takes us from a macro level view of the problem, saying, I've got all this stuff to do. What do I do? To breaking it down into bite-sized digestible pieces. And then we solve those smaller, lower level barriers that are preventing the big level benefits. So I'll do that. And that's how I come up with those motivators and means. And then we answer the what and how question, you know, and we can answer two different ways. So, Tan, you have a 14-year-old, I believe.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm not a parent. So what I'm about ready to say is malarkey. It's not true at all. So just know that this is for demonstrative purposes. It's not because I actually know how to be a great parent. So Ton, do you want to know the secret to being a good parent to a 14-year-old?
Sure, because I could
Sure.
use all the help I can get.
Yeah, I have no idea. But so I would say either I would give you an architected approach or an executed approach. So you're asking me, what is the secret and how does it make sure my kid's awesome? So I would say from an architected standpoint, what involves three things. It involves unconditional love. It involves consistency. It involves, I don't know, but that's architected. You don't look at that list and go like, okay, I'm going to go unconditional love you now. Whereas tactical would be, well, the first thing you do every day, you tell your child you love them. Second thing you do is that's tactical. So usually
Yes.
in a proposal at a high level, we go architected. So then what I do is I put together the solution. And right now it becomes a visual outline. It's not a graphic,
Hmm.
it's just a visual outline. So we architect it based on certain buckets that we decide on. Whereas the alternative is, let's say, if it's a task order response, then I'm going to go tactical. Then I'm going to go step one, step two, step three. And so what we do as a group is we agree to these things, and then we're telling a very powerful story that aligns with RFP requirements that then becomes our North Star for the rest of the proposal. Because remember,
Right.
we told you we were going to control cost. Well, this is how we do it. This is where we do it. This is how we do it. This is where we do it. And we thread it throughout, and it becomes a very believable story. So you have hierarchical motivators or benefits. In order to have cost control, you have to ensure there's no surprises. How do you ensure there's no surprises? By planning better and yada yada. So we're connecting
Yeah.
those dots, providing that context that you said you love. So
Yeah.
visual solutioning is just a way to help keep people from wasting money bidding on things they shouldn't. It's also a way to keep people from writing and come to find out after they go through a color team review, they got to scrap everything. It's a it's a macro. My iPad is talking to me. It is a macro to micro level view of the proposal. It's saying, all right, before I start getting into the minutia and the details, I'm going to start big picture.
Hmm.
Now I can jump down into the details when I need specifics, but I want to start big picture first. And usually, most proposals are micro to macro. That when I give someone a problem, they
Yes.
start focusing on the things that they know, which is very tactical. Back it up a bit. What's our story here? What's our approach?
Yeah.
What is our overall approach, first and foremost? That's the secret to doing writing winning proposals very, very quickly. I just did a job with a company. I'm not going to name their names, but the feedback that I got was that you just did in 2 days what we had been spending 6 months on and not done. So we just got together for 2 hours one day, 3 hours the next day, and we had our proposal mapped out. And
Yeah.
it works every freaking time.
Isn't it amazing how when customers say that, I'm like, you should have brought me on like a week ago. We could have done a cut to the chase, could have saved you a lot of work. But I think that's the reason why professionals like yourself, um, and Intellect and others of our colleagues are so successful and why industry will always need us is that we make you think outside of yourself. We kind of, like, I get it. These technical companies are very smart at what they do. They have very, very smart people. And I actually had a customer one time and says, well, I don't disagree with you, but my people are really smart. And I said, listen, I never, ever questioned your smartness. Okay. And whether or not you knew your stuff, I'm just questioning how you're presenting it. Okay. Because we need to kind of look at it from like a different perspective here. So pull yourself up a little bit. And that's why we need to have managers that are very strong, and solution people who are very strong, and making sure that our customers are focusing on what they need to focus on. And sometimes they need an outside voice to kind of tell them this. And so I hate this rush to write, this rush to get into the details, the rush to like do all this. And we're like, well, wait a second. What's your framework? What, like, have you tested your themes? Do you understand them? It's not like I'm making you do an exercise that is going to be left on the cutting room floor. And I think that's what a lot of times will happen is you get your BD, your capture people trying to get you thinking, like in these themes and value statements and value proposition and benefits and all this other stuff. And then there's no transition then from BD capture to proposals. And so the proposal team doesn't know where to start from. So they're just going to go from a very vanilla type of, like ChatGTP type of perspective. It's like there's no emotion, there's no understanding to it. It's just compliant, right? Compliant is different than responsiveness. And that's why I think, like understanding the connection and the importance of L&M and how they need to be in harmony with each other without being exclusively one vices the other. It requires sometimes other people to help facilitate that perspective, that understanding, that thing. And and that's why I'm trying to revive this. And I think this is going to be my next campaign and crusade is I want to bring storyboarding back. I want to make it in vogue again because there's so much value. You write less, you rewrite less, you start over less. If you just take some time to plan. But, we are such a instant gratification, results oriented type of, society anymore that if you can't produce a written pink team copy within, like X number of days since it's released, then it's, you're not being successful. I'm like, no, that's useless writing. That's wasteful writing because you haven't even gotten together and have these kind of like discussions and this dialogue. It's like you haven't even talked to each other. We don't even understand like what is our perspective? What is, like what is that common theme we're going to kind of try to thread through? And then you get to red and they're like, well, we're not going to manage it like that. Or we're not doing a hybrid PMO approach. Like, well, that's what you wrote, but that's not what the customer likes. So it's like, now you got to go back and, like rewrite things. And so it's very wasteful if you don't take the time to just kind of take a moment, breathe, digest it. Let's plan it a little bit more. Right.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. That's every time. There's a company that brought me on. I'm not going to name names again. They said, "Hey, we go after federal contracts, and they're a big company." And they said, "I think Mike's technique can help us with capture." And I said, "This was way back in the day. This was probably like 10 years ago, 8 years ago." And I said, "Sure, I'm game." So we sat down in a room with SMEs and we looked at the problem the customer had, and we started to use this process I was using to develop, architect
Mhm.
some solution. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I lost you. I lost you in one ear. Hold on. So what we found was that when we would come up with this idea solution, I'd sketch it out, rough enough, but well enough that we all understood it. And then what would happen is the capture manager would go meet with their point of contact, whoever it was, contracting officer or whatever it was, whoever their point of contact was, and they'd say, "All right, Daniel, me and my team, we got together." They would be transparent. Me and my team got together and we came up with a solution. And so they'd start sketching it out on a roughly, poorly on a piece of paper and walk them through, give the elevator pitch, give the story, and then say, "This is how we're going to do it." And then say to Daniel, "What are your thoughts? What did we get right? What did we get wrong?" And what they found was when they did that, and by the way, it's on a piece of paper. It's not like the competitors are going to be like, "Wow, look at this terrible drawing. Now I know what your approach is." So they threw it in the trash when they walked out the door. But what they found was every time they did this, they won because what they were doing was they were finding the most effective way to shape the RFP because not only were they means testing whether their solution would work, but they were also uncovering things that would bite them in the tuchus post submittal that they didn't know about. So what they were
Yeah.
trying to do is basically it's like asking your point of contact, paint me a picture of success now and going into the future, but giving them guardrails so that
Yeah.
they stayed and gave you the information that was actionable.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think there's a lot of tactics that we can do proposal side in the pre-phase and the capture phase that will make that whole transition so much more seamless. So anyways, Mike, you've been very overly generous with your time here today, and I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And for our intellectuals, this is like some insights here, the nuggets that you will not get from any type of formalized training. So in any case, thanks so much for joining us here, Mike, on the Keep to Change segment. And our intellectuals, I hope that you enjoy these nuggets. Please follow, subscribe, and share our podcast to others who might benefit from nuggets like this. And until next time, we'll see you in the next episode of Ton's 2 Cents.